Hey folks, welcome to Mobile Marketing Growth Tactics, our event today brought to you by Customer.io here. If this is the first time you've attended a webinar with us, welcome. Maybe you've attended a previous webinar before, one of our lifecycle marketing series, or maybe even one of our live builds where we actually get into the product and build some use case. If that's something you've been to in the past, good to see you again. Today we're going to go more fireside chat style with a couple of guests here, talking all things mobile. So excited to get into it. We've got two fantastic guests. We're going to quiz them on all things mobile and cross-channel marketing. In case you need a quick reminder of why mobile marketing is so important, I took a little screenshot the other day of my lock screen on my phone as I woke up in the morning. So you can see I've got some flight push notifications there at the top. Facebook has hit me up 3 or 4 times there. I have a fantasy football update asking me to do something in the middle. And then I even have a SMS there towards the bottom. So if this is probably nothing new, I'm sure your lock screen on your phone probably looks similar to this. But I think just to set the stage here as we jump into this topic, it's a crowded space, maybe just as crowded as the email inbox. So the importance of finding out how to send a message that gets the click and gets your customer to take that action and provides that value up front is definitely what we're going to be jumping into today. And hopefully Seth and Ugo can give us the magic potion on how to do this. To jump in, I'm Cody at Customer.io. I'm on the marketing team. Before working at Customer.io, a little backstory here, I worked for a subscription-based B2C company. So we kind of understood our customer journey pretty well at that company, but we didn't really have much integration with live data on what our customers doing. So we knew when they were about to churn, just because we knew when that behavior would happen, but we didn't have the live data to be able to let us know how to react to it or be able to jump in and impact that moment. So that was a big challenge. And I think as we kind of set the stage here again for this event, getting access to the right data at the right time so you can get in and send that message is kind of essential for anybody in marketing today. But also it's kind of what drives Customer.io as a platform. So it's a cross-channel customer engagement platform based on a live integration with your web and mobile app. So all those things that are coming in, a user's taking this action, they're activating this step, or maybe they aren't doing those things. And, you want to send as we see on the screen here, a push notification in those key churn moments. Those are the kind of workflows that you're able to build and iterate on in Customer.io across email, SMS, push, in-app, lots of stuff you can do with data workflows to trigger things when this happens or when this doesn't happen. So kind of the world's your oyster as you get in there and build out these workflows. So that's a little background on Customer.io. We had the pleasure of working with companies across a bunch of different industries like IMAX, DataCamp, Angie, to name a few, along with the companies of our guests here today, Bamboo in the fintech space, and Papa in the healthcare and wellness space. So all that to say, let's get in and talk mobile strategy and execution. And let me intro our guests too here really quick before we do and hear a little bit about their companies. So joining us today is Ugo Iwuchukwu, Head of Marketing at Bamboo. And we also have Seth Longhurst, Lifecycle Product Growth Manager at Papa. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. To give the audience a little bit of background before we jump into the use cases, I'd love to hear a little bit about your company and role. So Ugo, maybe we can start with you. What's Bamboo?
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about the product, and what you do there.
Yeah. So Bamboo is basically a platform that lets Africans invest in US equities. It sounds simple enough until you realize just how difficult that was. Actually, it was virtually impossible for Africans to do that before we came into business. And also another thing that you had is just the volume of financial literacy in this part of the world, it's incredibly high. So we find ourselves in a position where we are able to sort of create a generational shift, right? So we're able to educate these mass amount of people on why it's important to, yes, save, yes, budget, but also invest, and giving them a platform, to access what is essentially the best, financial markets in the world. So in a nutshell, that's sort of what we do, helping people grow their wealth, teaching them, the best practices and how to think about it.
Awesome. Thanks for that background, Ugo. Seth, what about Papa? What is Papa's product and what's your role there?
So Papa is a two-sided marketplace, and we actually work on, connecting what we call pals with, members on our platform who usually are typically, senior adults, but they might be, expectant mothers, or we work with employers. And so it might be, an employee caregiver who's helping an elder parent that might need a PAL to help with their family. We really think of ourselves as kind of family on demand. But really, Papa's really combating loneliness, and loneliness is a pretty big epidemic. I think the pandemic is something that highlighted that for a lot of people. We've seen how many, seniors, might not have access to transportation to go to the doctor, or might need help taking them to the grocery store, get help. And so Papa, we use an app. We work with health plans to provide PALs to, be that family on demand, and someone that, someone in need or of help or friendly connection can get. And so we work, like I said, with health plans before, and PALs. I actually work on the PAL side. And so my job is really, and the team I work on is, acquiring, retaining, and engaging those PALs and making sure they have all the information they need along their journey. It's a pretty complicated process, actually, in order to get started and get working as a PAL. And this is actually my first time working in a marketplace. And so, we do have, certain markets that we're launching in, or demand for certain markets. So it's very market based. And that's been an interesting and unique new challenge for me as well.
Yeah. Thanks for those intros. I think I'm super excited to get more into, Seth, you're talking about kind of some two sides of a marketplace. Ugo, I know Bamboo is launching in different countries. So I'm excited to kind of hear how personalized experience for these different groups, but also reducing complexity for the different groups kind of plays out for each of you. So thanks for those quick intros. For folks in the audience who maybe just have joined, welcome. Let's take a quick look at the agenda so we can see where we're going to go before we go full speed ahead. But the golden question today, as we get into the topics, is how can we better leverage the data that we have and a cross-channel approach to drive mobile growth? So we're going to go through it a little bit life cycle style here. So we're going to start with acquisition and activation. How do you make an impact in the first part of a customer's journey and help them get them to value quickly? And then we'll talk more about engagement and retention. How do you keep people coming back to your app, taking those actions, and overall improving their lifetime value for your business? So we'll go there, and then we'll round things out with our last section on panelist experiments. So the spirit of always be testing, our guests have prepped a little test that they ran recently, and we're going to see some results there. So excited for that. Okay, so setting the stage here before we get into the acquisition activation topic, what is unique about mobile marketing and mobile channels, especially maybe for somebody who is just new to these channels? Ugo, I want to start from you. What would you say is the most unique thing about mobile marketing in general?
There are many things, really. I think one thing is it's sort of like if you think of what the phone has done, how it's revolutionized human behavior and essentially put the entire world into this small device. Mobile marketing is really your ability, especially, obviously, there's an assumption that you have a platform, an app. You have your little piece of the internet, your little piece of the whole wide world that you can then use to grab the attention of your customer, your prospective customer. And I think there's a responsibility that comes with that. How do you do it in such a way that that person doesn't find your platform annoying? There's a responsibility that comes with it, but it's also like a privilege. This customer has said, I want you to grab my attention, so I will keep your platform on my device. So that's how I think about it. It's incredibly unique. There's so many things you can do with it. So many, things that are considering, the cost to take you to try and get the attention on Facebook or Google with ads. It's just on your phone. It's just a push notification. So yeah, I think it's a great privilege as a marketer to have that little piece of the internet, and also like a great amount of responsibility to be sure you steward it properly.
Yeah, I love that. We were breaking down emails the other day and talking about how somebody has already said that they want to know your value by signing up for your product or your emails. And so, as you said, that responsibility to try to deliver that and do it in a good way. Yeah, that's a really great call out. Seth, what are you thinking here? What is unique about mobile marketing?
I think, on the first side, it's just like how much data you have access to. I think if you're coming from like worlds before, what I was really dealing with apps, and even working with systems like Customer.io, where there's better and tighter integrations with, systems that support streaming mobile data. How much data is available and how quickly that can be available is something that's very different than what you might be used to if you're using kind of legacy, some of the more legacy tools, or you're a web-based marketer. Also, I think, one thing that's very interesting about mobile is just how much friction has been removed in the space of entry and competitive. And I've been to a lot of conferences, and you see, for most people and mobile apps, how many people just sign up, install, and churn and do nothing. And that's just something that's been very interesting. And when you're on the consumer side, usually, once you get someone into the store and they're kind of made, purchase, they've made I feel like there's a bigger investment and they're kind of easier to keep. I find you're competing for so much time and attention and app space on a phone and notification. It's kind of so easy to get there. Like Ugo said, you have to respect it. It's a right and a privilege, and you are going to be competing with a lot of different things. But I think, the most interesting thing to me, and that I've learned from a lot of other mobile marketers, is just churn stats are crazy. And so it's really, really hard to keep people retained and engaged in mobile marketing.
Yeah, we get some thumbs up coming from the audience there. I'm thinking too, as you're saying that, Seth, I know I'm guilty of that moment when you pull up your phone to take a picture and your storage is full. And usually the first thing I do is go to the app that I use the least and delete it, because I know I can get this many, megabytes back to take the photo I'm trying to take. So it's you have to compete to get them first, but then you have to compete to be valuable enough to stay on their screen there as they go. So yeah, great call out. I'm curious, let's jump into more acquisition activation here on our lifecycle topics. So I think prefacing this topic a little bit, the thing that I think marketers maybe are asking when they're considering building out a mobile app journey are, where does the app factor in? Is it a first entry point? Is it something that you get someone to later? How does it connect with web experience, et cetera, et cetera? But Seth, maybe I'll start again with you this time. I know Papa has two different users to your marketplace who sign up. Where does the mobile app fit in your customer journey, maybe for each of those different user types, or is it the same?
So right now it's very interesting because, for our PAL journey, it's web to app. And so the app is actually kind of the last part of their PAL application process. So we're not actually doing any app store acquisition or anything. We have a very different model when it comes there. And for our member model, it's actually very interesting because a lot of it is actually, we're doing outbound and targeted enrollment from our member operations center, because we are careful about what health plans we launch with and where we're launching. It's a very tightly coordinated effort. And so some plans are using our care app, some aren't, for members to schedule visits, but it's actually something that's kind of on the tail end of their visit as well. I think in the future that might change, and we're looking at changing that, but the web to app journey is interesting and kind of has some complications, and a lot of people are comfortable. So I don't know. I'd say it's interesting in our end, just because I've become more involved at the tail end of someone's application and journey, where we have a lot of growth people and on our acquisition team who are pushing them through our web journey.
Yeah, I want to dig more into that too, because I think that's such an interesting marketplace model or you just technology wise, you've got some people are on the mobile app, like you said, some people are getting engaged with human contact out and about and connecting all those experiences. I have some follow-up questions I want to ask, but Ugo, before we jump into more stuff, what's the Bamboo app journey there? Do people usually come to Bamboo for the first time through the App Store, or is it something that they start web and then go mobile? Talk to me about that.
So it's primarily from the App Store. So the app is the central place that people use it. However, I think it varies in terms of our go-to-market strategies for new countries. So in Ghana, which is the first market outside Nigeria that we launched in, we really started from a web wait list. So a lot of people signed up there before, eventually downloading the app when it became available. But most of the operations happen on the web app. We do have some B2B products on the mobile app. We do have some B2B products where it's basically domiciled on the web app, because it really needs a lot more space. You're talking stock market charts. You need to do a lot more. So we look at the web as really an extension of the mobile, in that sense.
Yeah, I love it. I think things that are an extension of other things seems like it's all connected. So that's great. I want to talk more now too about, so once people are in your customer journey or they're in your app, like what are you trying to get them to do first? Like what are those activation milestones or aha moments that you're trying to lead them to? And Ugo, maybe I'll start with you. At part 2 to that question, like what data points are telling you that they are or aren't reaching those moments as well?
Okay. Because you said first, if you had just asked what do I want them to do, I would like them to give me money.
We can start there. Let's start there.
I would like them to give me money. No, but first, I think just the way so we sort of very early on broke our platform down into the sort of, we call them the big blocks, right? So the very first thing, because we're a fintech platform, it's the KYC. That's the most important thing. After the KYC, we have something we call investment profile. So we really need to understand who you are, as an investor. And if you're like a politically exposed person, most people are not. And then we move on to really the next thing we would like people to do is make that first deposit. And then we would like people to, invest, whether it's buy a stock, we have a fixed income product, or use that product as well. So those are like sort of like the core pillars of stuff we like people to do. However, one of the things we've had to learn early on is understanding user behavior and recognizing the limit of what marketing can force. People are going to behave a certain type of way. And I think as marketers, it's recognizing how much you can push before how much you can change, user behavior. And you can do it a little bit, right? And you can do it a little bit over time, but you rarely ever can do it all at once. So for instance, and what do I mean by that? And I'll give an example. One of the things we learned, I would say within the first full year of our business is most people on the platform tend to make the highest amount of deposits in a single period in a month, right? And when we look at the data and go back, it makes sense because most of the people that use our platforms are salary earners, right? So our worst week every month is the week right before salary comes in. And Nigeria and most companies in Nigeria pay on a monthly basis, not weekly like you see in other countries. So the best time in the month for us is right after the salary week. The worst time is right before. If you're not looking at data and you don't have a great understanding of your funnel, you're going to try and make things, work that just aren't working. So you'll be spending time thinking of marketing campaigns, running marketing campaigns, and it's not going to do anything. So what do we then do? We say, okay, how do you create stuff that you can so that you can prompt people during that, drought period, the week before salary, that, hey, salary is coming, don't forget to do this, when the salary comes, and stuff like that. So how you think about the eventual, campaigns that you're running is different when you sort of understand where people are across your funnel. So for us, those are just the major points in our funnel.
Yeah. So Ugo, follow up to that. When you're building like messaging campaigns, is there a different onboarding experience for somebody who's signing up closer to that certain date range than somebody who's not? Or like, how are you kind of like building out these campaigns based on that?
That's a good question. So we don't really have that because it's difficult to do that because companies pay different times. We just have like an aggregate, right? But however, what we did do, I think that maybe close to where you're talking, is we did start to track how long it takes people between sign up and their first deposit. And it came around 30 to 45 days, so still around the same period. And we also began to track because we have like, we call them tier 1 users, tier 2 users, tier 3 users, sort of broken down by portfolio value. We also started to track how long does it take somebody to go from like deposits to like a tier 1 user that's giving, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And how long does it take to get to tier 2? What type of deposits do they make in tier 1 that will end up getting them to? So for instance, we found that on average, people that have around $10,000 to $100,000 in deposits, their first ever deposit on Bamboo is typically around 1,000, which we understand because Nigeria is a low trust society. So I'm not going to give you money I can't afford to lose. So we do try and create messaging when we note, for people that are coming with that first 1,000, because we know there's a high probability these people go all the way to tier 1. So that's sort of how we differentiated it, not necessarily around the time of the month, but it did start by understanding the time of the month.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it sounds like that first 1,000 is like a crucial life cycle piece, is get them there or help them get there. Like you said, you can't always force people to take the behavior, but remind them or help them get to that moment.
Yeah.
Cool. I have some follow-ups there as well, but Seth, let's hear from you on that first question. What are those first activation milestones on Papa, and maybe specifically the Papa Pals? Like, what are you trying to get them to do first?
Really, for the first is, I mean, we're trying to, well, through our sign up journey, really, I mean, there's like some key milestones, and we want them to tell us where they are. That helps us engage and know whether or not, hey, do we need pals in this location or not? And then through our onboarding and sign up process, like one of our key moments is, in order to be a Papa Pal, you have to submit to a background check. And so that's actually a very big point of friction. So getting someone to go through those consents and run that background check and getting through that process. And then after that, letting them know that they're approved, they're ready to be a pal. If there are visits in their area, getting them to get into the app, accept that first visit and complete that first visit is actually one of our biggest hurdles and journeys. And for, a lot of gig apps that you'll talk to, I mean, just getting someone to activate and do that first job is very challenging. And so that's kind of, our key milestone is getting someone to activate. And then in a lot of gig apps, a lot of people will only do something once. And so really getting someone to have a good experience, do that first visit, and then boom, getting that second visit scheduled. Those are really key moments and opportunities for us.
Seth, what channels, I guess, bringing some of this back to mobile, how do you use mobile channels intermixed in this whole first part of the customer journey? Is there any points where you have found a mobile channel or maybe even a non-mobile channel that connects to some mobile experience effective or helpful in the work that you do?
Well, I'd say primarily when we started, we were really focused on push and SMS, thinking that, hey, it's a mobile app. And like one thing interesting we found about our pals is, and that's been kind of a surprise to me, is like email's been a very effective channel for us. Our pals tend to skew, might be a more email friendly audience. And I've actually looking at a lot of our email usage, we've done some stuff where, a big chunk of our people are Gmail web. And so they're actually not on their phones. They're on their desktop looking at emails. And so we found email has been a helpful channel there's a lot of times where, we may need to provide context or provide some learning opportunities or provide additional information. And email has been a helpful channel in our journey.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. And I think like on our initial poll we popped up for folks in the audience, we kept it to in-app, SMS, and push. But I think like as your point saying, like how email works into that whole mobile experience is another piece. And one more follow-up on that too. And then I want to ask another question over to Ugo. But when it comes to email, like how are you, like what kind of behaviors in your mobile app are maybe influencing when emails go out or how they go out, or maybe it's a transactional type use case? How does that kind of data and then trigger flow happen for your workflow at Papa?
For myself, or
I like the work that you do. Is there behaviors in the mobile app that help trigger email experiences during kind of this onboarding phase?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of as far as like different events that are firing within the app and some of the nested data that are in those events that we're using as like triggered events. A lot of our campaigns might be, event triggered and like a wait until period to see if something happens, and then using that nested event data in an email or message if something happens. We're also like working with our engineering team recently on a project where we're getting some more API endpoints developed where we can get information in real time about a PAL and using that in messages as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm curious, Ugo, as well, like when it comes to channels, what have you found effective during this early life cycle stage? Is there a certain mobile channel or just channels in general that stands out during onboarding?
I think for us, similar to Papa, email is incredibly effective. I think for us also in part because a lot of what we are doing is user education. So emails tend to be very effective. Push notifications are more of a tool to sort of, remind people about stuff, for us anyway. And SMS is really, this is important. give me your attention right now. But emails are very, very effective. And I think in-app messaging is very helpful for us as a piece of educational tool, a non-disruptive piece of educational tool for us.
Yeah. What kind of led you to those conclusions? Was it like watching data on trying email versus SMS or push versus SMS at certain moments? Or talk to me about how you kind of made those decisions.
Yeah, because we did look at data. So we did realize SMS is probably the most disruptive here in Nigeria because it's weird. But it is also like the most effective. So we need to be really careful with it. It's like the close second will be emails. People can read your email, get context. One feedback we even got from a user, and this has come from different people as well, is people use our emails as a resource. So we have this email, we branded it, we called it the Bamboo Watch List. Basically, at the beginning of every week, before the markets, start for the week, we typically send an email. And the email originally started as the different stocks, people in the team were watching. We don't give financial advice, but we try and contextualize it. So we used to tell our readers, we still do, how our team members are thinking about stuff that's in their real portfolio. And some users began to keep those emails as a resource. And the next time they would want to buy a stock or sell a stock, they would go and look for our emails for where our team members were talking about it. And we're like, it's just us. It's not really, the disclaimer is huge there. It's not really, but they were like, yeah, but it's sort of like social proof because I want to see if it validates how I'm thinking about stuff. So emails for us, very, very effective in that sense. So really just contextualizing things for users, explaining it to them and getting them confident that they have been educated. And push notification is more for creating sort of like awareness or prompting people to do certain stuff, transactions as well. And yeah, I think in-app, because it's still relatively new, we haven't done a lot of it, but the very early feedback is it could be a very helpful way to pass across educational content.
Yeah. Ugo, as you're explaining through that too, in our last webinar, we asked the question, is email dead? And the answer was, fortunately, no, it's not. But one of the other takeaways from that event was that things that people want to come back to or longer form stuff, yeah, like send it in an email. They're probably not going to read the push notification or SMS, or maybe you can't even write something that long in there. So just mixing in right place, right time for each channel. So thanks for talking through that.
Okay, we have stuff where it's emailed, it provides a lot of context, and it's an SMS. Hey, you check your email. I mean, I think one thing that's interesting is I know a lot of people just email behavior changing in general. I think as like Slack has become the new email, and as workers were relying more on messaging for those instant communications. Email isn't the urgent channel it used to be, but it is an opportunity to provide more context and more information that might not be easily able for you to get in, individually into an app experience.
I'm going on a trip soon, and email's so helpful to find those tickets and those confirmation things. Again, I can't imagine if that was sent to me over text, going back 2 months worth of text to find. So yeah, I love that approach. I was going to say, for the sake of time, let's jump over to engagement and retention, because I want to make sure we save enough time for the experiments portion as well. But let's kind of set this up with a scenario, maybe to preface this middle life cycle for your customers. So let's say you've successfully onboarded somebody, they're relatively active in your app, whatever that means for your specific company. But Ugo, I'll start with you. Somebody who's been onboarded, maybe even they reached that $1,000 or 1,000 currency level that you said is kind of increases the stickiness. What are you looking to get them towards next? What are those next key milestones, and how are you measuring success?
Yeah, I think for us, the next thing really becomes around consistency. You want people coming back and doing the same thing. But it's tricky for us, again, just the nature of the product is because you want people doing the same thing, but you want them doing the same thing the right way. So as a marketer, as much as I want people to deposit, I also don't want people to lose money, because then they will stop using my product. So I want people to, whatever behavior that they have, and obviously you can look at data and sort of like see aggregates. That's how we found that a lot of people tend to make deposits So we find people tend to make deposits maybe around once a month, and then they make trades around 4 times a month. So that one deposit goes, 4 times. So yeah, something we also look at from data as well is just sort of like on aggregate, what sort of stocks users are buying, what sort of risk do people have in their portfolio. We can't necessarily tell for specific individuals, but the day we wake up and we see the most bought stock on our platform is like an incredibly volatile stock, then I'm not necessarily happy. Although there will always be that. So what we really do is sort of putting, because it's the stock market, the news is really the key thing. So sort of putting the news in front of people in a way that they understand. Finance news is not the easiest to understand, especially when 75% of your users are first-time investors. So you have to break it down for them. The number of times we have defined the S&P 500 in a newsletter, I cannot tell you. Just when you think people are beginning to understand what it means, there's someone that responds to the email, and we do encourage people to respond to our emails. I don't know what the S&P 500 is. So the next time you send an email, the S&P 500, the largest, so we put that information in front of people. So the Bamboo watch list is an incredibly useful tool for us. Like I explained before, it's sort of like the aggregate of the thoughts a number of people in our team are thinking about the stocks that they own in their own portfolio. Right. We also have something, we call it the Bamboo Leaf. The Bamboo Leaf is something we've created for users that we're trying to nudge into certain level of activity. And it's really around deconstructing, financial complexities for them. So we're not necessarily talking to them about, what Apple, Google's earnings or Microsoft's earnings, but how to budget, because that's important, right? How to think about your spend, how to think about breaking down, your income into investment and savings. What does it mean to invest? How long should you be thinking about investing in something? And we find that those to be very helpful. So we send, apart from like the automated campaigns that we send to users that is triggered by different actions they take, we do a lot of broadcasts. So we send the watch list at the beginning of the week. We send what we call a watch list recap at the end of the week. So we told you this is what we're looking at the end. This is what happened to the stuff we told you we're looking at. We send the leaf, to a different segment of users, once a week, deconstructing all these things. We try to be really playful with our email, with our push notifications. There might have been a time where we were sending music lyrics in our push notifications. But you just need to be creative about it, right? You just need to be creative about it. And we make different resources, whether it's free guides. So there are times when during COVID, we did this, 2021, we did this. We didn't do it this much this year, but we would break down like specific industries, right? This is what I remember news broke around when Microsoft was trying to acquire Activision. We did a free guide on everything you need to know about the gaming industry, and you send it to people via emails, so people read it and whatnot. I remember when, and this is the last thing I will say on this, so I don't go on too long, but I remember this year when sort of the market was, beginning to crater, we wanted people to sort of think about diversifying their portfolio, because most of our investors were concentrated in technology. And so we started creating free guides around like the other things you could invest in aside tech, ETFs, said S&P 500, bonds and different things. And one remarkable thing that we saw is for the very first time in our history, the Vanguard S&P 500 was among the most bought stocks on our platform. That had never happened before. You always had like a couple of people buying it here, but it became top 5, and it's honestly remained there for the whole of this year.
Nice.
Yeah. So I hope I answered the question on how we think about it.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting. It sounds like education is a big piece to like getting somebody to stay on long term, just keeping them learning more and understanding and being more confident. I have a quick follow-up, and then I want to jump over to Seth. But Ugo, in kind of like 30 to 60 seconds, what would you say are kind of the KPIs that you look at when kind of like measuring how well they're doing in this kind of like product adoption or middle life cycle? Expanding their usage stage?
But there are lots. I think the central things will be, I would stick to the central business metrics. For us, that's sort of like revenue, trades, deposits. When we begin to boil down into sort of like the marketing focused, email open rate is very important. Click-through rate is very important for us. We do use social media engagement, even as a very important metric. So just not just following, but people actually interacting with us. And something we look at anecdotally as well is the type of messages that's going into customer support. So if it's questions around the actual events in the market, the actual happenings, that's very helpful and that's very informative because people are engaged. So that's what we look at.
Yeah, getting some of that qualitative feedback too on what they're wondering or what they're asking about too.
Exactly.
Okay, Seth, kicking this over to you. So engaging and retaining somebody. So a pop-up pal who maybe has done that first visit, they've made it through kind of like that first part of the life cycle. What are like the key behaviors that you're trying to nurture them towards next? And then kind of the part two, as I just asked Ugo, what are some of those KPIs that help you measure if that's actually happening or not?
Sure. So really, I mean, KPIs we look at are, how many visits a PAL is doing per month. There's kind of an ideal threshold that we have. Some that might vary per market, but there's kind of a point where we know that, a PAL is consistently doing visits and that they hit that threshold. Things that I look at particularly is like how many visits a PAL will have scheduled within the next 2 weeks. That's kind of like a natural planning cadence. And so looking at that, if someone doesn't have visits scheduled in the next 2 weeks or they haven't scheduled a visit recently, that's something that's a flag or might be a cause for concern. Organizationally also, MPS is something we look at and seeing how that changes and monitoring a lot of feedback. And then we do a lot of social listening, and our pals are very active on social media. And so there's, different social groups we monitor, and then even just, mentions. And then our care and support team is very cognizant of monitoring and looking at different issues that are arising. And we have a lot of tools that are, like to Ugo's point, monitoring those, support tickets that come in or complaints and concerns that come in as well too.
Yeah. Seth, I know, or one of the things that we hear frequently when we ask, especially on these kind of events, what topics people want to hear about, one that consistently comes up over and over on the topic of feedback is how do we avoid over messaging, especially during you've got somebody excited and they're using your product, but now how do we not annoy them, or how do we not send too many messages as a marketer? I'd love to get your thoughts here, Seth. I know you've tested kind of quantity of message or how much it affects monthly visits that your pals take. Talk to us about kind of maybe some things that you've tried there, or how much messaging is the right amount during this middle stage.
I mean, it depends. I mean, it depends on your cohort, obviously, but typically, we've done I'd use frequency canvassing, so I try to limit it to no more than 4 non-essential notifications a day, but that may vary by your industry or by your user. But that's kind of something that we use as in Customer IO, is to just message frequency capping. But then also organizationally, we try to limit any broader important pushes or updates or bigger things, no more than 2 a week, and try to space those out accordingly. Obviously things come up, but and you might not be able to avoid that, but that's one thing that we try to do. But a lot of it comes down to testing too. And I think one thing to be careful too is you'll have a lot of people, frontline feedback, you're only going to get complaints. And so there are going to get people saying I'm over messaging, and you might naturally think that, oh, we're sending too much, and you may not be sending enough. So you just have to test.
Yeah. When in doubt, test it out. That's what I'm hearing. Ugo, what's your quick thoughts there too, before we get into our experiments portion? How do you determine if you're sending too many messages or just the right amount?
I think Seth mostly covered it. You sort of have to, maybe sometimes set an arbitrary number and sort of feel your way to it. For us, we've settled at, because of how important education is and we really need those channels, we sort of settled at, in terms of emails, no more than twice a week, right? So if we need to send very important company announcements, we have in time past typically canceled, a broadcast newsletter, one of the newsletters that we would typically send, just so we don't go above that. For inactive, the more inactive someone has become, the less messages we send to them. And so somebody that's, inactive may get once a week or something like that. So yeah, I think you sort of have to use your best judgment and feel your way towards it, recognize that this may not be it. And then as Seth said, even as that feedback is coming, you also want to keep looking at other data data points as well, so that you don't make a decision of something that's not reflective of. But I don't think you can be too cautious. You can't under disturb someone. You can only overdo it. So yeah.
Yeah, I like the Seth, what you said too, and Ugo, as you chimed in, like the don't maybe pull the plug on messaging just because you get a couple of support tickets that were unhappy about some message or something. If the unsubscribes aren't happening, then okay, we'll take the feedback and change it up. But look at the data. Don't panic right away.
Your data, your unsubscribe rate, your click-through rate, and even like we look at conversions too. I mean, conversion is really our like on each campaign. That's kind of a North Star metric we look at when it's set up, and if something's converting, and hey, so if someone unsubscribes, it's not like they're telling you your baby's ugly. It's they just don't want those messages, and that's fine.
Great. Don't take it personal.
Don't take it personally.
Okay, great. We got some emojis coming in there. So we have about 17 minutes left, doing a quick time check, and want to make sure we have a few minutes left for questions. So let's jump over to our experiments portion. I appreciate you talking us through those life cycle pieces. This next spot in our webinar here, so each of our panelists has prepped a little experiment test that they ran recently and kind of some learnings around it. So if you could kind of each take us through, maybe keep it about 5 minutes if we can. And audience, please, too, we'll leave time for Q&A, but jump in with questions now too, so that maybe we can incorporate them into some of these last little tests that we're going to look at. But Ugo, I'll actually start with you and your experiment. So talk us through kind of like the situation and what you were looking to test, and then we can get into the results too, but kind of give us that context to start on your onboarding, testing it out by different country.
Okay, so we recently launched, just about a month ago actually, launched in our first country outside Nigeria, so that's Ghana. Ghana and Nigeria are close geographically, and we're sort of like two of the only 3 English-speaking countries, I could be wrong, in West Africa, right? So we are similar, but we also are different. And Nigerians, if you have any Nigerian friends, we're very boisterous people. We're loud and we're, we're about. Ghanaians are not that. They're calm, they're laid back. So one of the things that we wanted to do is we didn't want our platform to feel like a Nigerian product that went into Ghana. We wanted it to feel as much Ghanaian as it was Nigerian. Most of the products is the same. We do have asset classes that are available in Nigeria and not available in Ghana. And some steps in the KYC in Ghana versus Nigeria are different. So what we decided to do was, instead of having one onboarding, one general onboarding that sort of, complete your KYC, we wanted to personalize it as much as possible, accounting for sort of like our differences as a people, because we know what the similarities are. Our differences as a people, our differences in the types of asset classes that we can be investing in, and also our differences in the different places in the onboarding flow. So we created an entirely separate, a separate onboarding flow for Ghana, and we let it run, so the messaging was a little bit different. The points we were telling people to do certain things were a little bit different. The contents in some way was even different. So in our Nigerian onboarding, there were some newsletters and some emails rather that we had made basically video, so we will put the video and then the text would be like a very short summary of what's discussed in the video. We try to keep everything short and sweet generally. When we did that for Ghana, we decided that we don't want someone with a Nigerian accent. We want someone with a Ghanaian accent. So we did that same video with Ghanaians, did that type of summary well, and we set it live. What we saw in the feedback was our Ghanaian open rate surprisingly jumped ahead of our Nigerian open rates. So we were having about 30 to 33% open rate in Nigeria. And in Ghana, we saw around 44% thereabouts. The click-through rates in Nigeria versus Ghana also increased. So in Ghana, the numbers in Ghana also increased. And it's very interesting, right, for us, because Ghana is a considerably smaller country than Nigeria. So when you're talking percentages, that was very interesting to look at. And then the general feedback we got. So now this is bringing what we've done on Customer IO to real life. we did a mini exhibition in Ghana shortly after launching, after this experiment had gone live, and people came to us and they were like, when are you going to do a mixer? You should do a mixer in Ghana. You should come to Ghana. People really wanted to see us, and you have to do what your customers want. So we are doing a mixer next tomorrow in Accra. But I do believe it did come from trying to personalize it and make it very Ghanaian, make it something that feels that it was made for Ghanaians, as opposed to like one country just exporting their app to another to our country. So that was really the experiment that we ran.
Yeah, thanks for talking us through it. And as you said there at the end, that's so interesting. Kind of Seth, we even talked about the start, mixing in your mobile experience with some of the people who are being served by Papa are actually interacting with a human who helps get them set up and those type of things. And then Ugo, you're bringing it back to technology. You're using it to provide a personalized experience, but then the actual one thing you're measuring is like, do people want to then have a live event, which is maybe hard to measure on a pure attribution model, but like it is like, does seem, as you're saying, confirming that like, hey, they had a great experience. It felt like what they are used to, and yeah, they want to have more of it. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Ugo, thanks for taking us through that. Seth, let's look over at your experiment here. I know we're talking a little bit more in the MPS response world, and this title is maybe a little vague as we start, but 45 minutes versus 24 hours. So talk us through what you were testing and kind of what you learned.
Well, one thing, we test typically is like, we'll do a MPS after someone activates. And so initially, like, our train of thought, was like, let's do that soon. We had some feedback that maybe we're doing it too soon. There's a lot of after someone activates, there's like other surveys that need to be completed, other things that a PAL might need to be doing. Are we, we want them to do their next visit. And so, naturally, I don't know the answer. I don't know which is right. Do we do it, really close to that visit, or do we wait? And so we did a test just to see, doing a delay at 45 minutes, what happens if we wait a day? And our open rate didn't really change. What we did find is, we did find a pretty significant dip in our click rate and our conversion rate by doing so. And so that's just something where, we may not have the answer. A lot of people have opinions. And so sometimes the only way is by testing.
Yeah. What do you think was the reason that the quick 45-minute, MPS triggered message performed better, getting those survey completions than the other one? I know, like you said, you might not know the exact thing, but do you have any hypotheses there?
Hypotheses are just, that something, when they activate, it's something that it's really tied to an action that they've done in the app. They're probably still very close to having completed that. It's top of mind, more likely to respond and provide feedback just because it's top of mind. That's, my top of mind, my hypotheses.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like the last Uber that I took. When it pops up right after my visit that, hey, put the rating of your driver, I feel like I do it. But if it's the next day and I get the push that, hey, forgot to rate, I'm doing work, I'm doing something else, it's not as crucially right there in my time to do it. So that's interesting. Just catch them in the right moment. Awesome. Well, thanks to both of you for walking us through the experiments, but also talking through all these lifecycle and mobile use cases as well. I appreciate both of your perspectives, and it's been super interesting for me. I hope the audience got a lot from it too, of just hearing kind of Seth, you on the marketplace health kind of space, and Ugo, you working in fintech markets, but also like fintech markets across multiple countries. It sounds like there's lots of interesting things that we could have dug even more into, but I want to save this last little bit for questions. I'm curious, as folks give them a minute to put a question in, I'm curious about the relationship between the product team and the marketing team at each of your organizations. Do the same people own all the channels, or is it a collaboration always between product and marketing? Who owns push? Who owns email? Who owns, some of these other functions? Ugo, do you have any thoughts there? Or what's the product and marketing relationship like at Bamboo?
Okay, you mean when we're not fighting? I've been told every product and marketing team are always fighting. I can confirm it's true. But jokes apart, I think how we structured ours was we let products handle a lot of the transactional stuff. So anything that has to do with like deposit transaction notification, trade confirmation, all those different things, we let product do it. And we take, everything from onboarding to actual like user education. So that's sort of how we think about it. So anything that has to do with the core movement and status of people's money, then product does that because you want it as, you don't want, you want to be able to get to the bottom of it. So that's how we broke ours down and how we handle that relationship. So product rarely ever does marketing stuff, and we rarely ever do, transactional or anything of that nature.
Seth, is this similar for y'all at Papa or different than that?
I'd say it depends and it changes, but I think, we have a web team that's really in charge of like our sign up and activation. And like we also have a app product team that really focuses kind of on our in-app experiences. Similar to Hugo, there are some things that, are, if something is kind of like visit related or something very like notification related or visit specific or something like pure transactional, usually that's handled by the PAL app team. But it depends.
Always test.
Usually it's like, core business functions, core business operations like that, will fall under, product or be something that's kind of like initiated and managed and sent by the product team.
Yeah. Seth, I think you mentioned earlier in this event, like, when we talked about the Wise Mobile Unique and talking about, like on more legacy platforms, this might have been the way that you did things in the past, but now here's some new things. I'm thinking as you're talking through that as well, and Hugo, to your comments, like the blending of product and marketing and how much the functions sometimes overlap too. It's probably made even more by just the fact that everybody has access to behavioral data now and can set up these advanced flows, whereas maybe at one time it was between the developers and the product managers who manage all that transactional stuff, but now the marketer has kind of a lens on it as well. Yeah, that's just an interesting little observation there.
And there's a lot of education about like, the systems that we use and the like capabilities that I have. There's, a lot of product teams come to us because, in this role and in past roles, because they, want to be able to test more agilely and be able to measure those results easily. And doing that, natively, hard coded is a lot more complicated than, using a tool that, makes it really easy to set up an A/B test or, do testing and measure the results. So that's been something that, I've encountered in, probably, the last two roles.
Yeah. We have just a couple more minutes. I'm going to get to Elijah's question here in the chat. Talking about technical aspects of mobile marketing, and maybe I'll rephrase this question too a little bit. For somebody who maybe is just getting started in mobile marketing, they've done email marketing again for a long time, what would you say is like the thing that they should read up on or learn the most about when it comes to like some of the technical aspects, like things like deep links or maybe working with your developers to install a mobile SDK and then how that data comes in, Android versus iOS? Is there any of those technical things that you're like, as a takeaway from this, you should go read up on this topic or that?
I think for really like mobile marketing in general, really understanding events and like just how events and metadata work, and if you're involved or can be involved, just like being involved in like what that event naming plan and that structure plan and how data is set up. I think that's a really important and key concept to learn. So I would say that like if you're using Segment, going through Segment University, I think is something that, I would recommend to anybody that's new in, the mobile marketing space.
Yeah, love it. We actually conveniently, thanks for the pitch, Seth. We just put out some data taxonomy guides on our Learn page earlier or end of last month. So yeah, like just tackling that, how do we name events? I think one takeaway that I learned from that was like the best data structures are ones that you can get in and understand, and they make sense, and the naming convention makes sense. Getting some of that foundational stuff. Ugo, the last 2 minutes here, what's your take on that? Any technical aspect of mobile marketing that you would recommend folks dig more into if they're trying to get more in the space?
So I think Seth's actually Seth's correct. So I will borrow a lot of what he said. I think it's important to understand sort of like the events. In Bamboo, we are the ones that sort of, we have the relationship where we sort of determine the events that product tracks. That's one. I think two, my general rule is you want to know a little bit about everything such that you can understand what people are telling you, and you don't want to be afraid to ask questions. So just the way marketing is a bottomless pit of stuff is the same way, a lot of technical aspects are a bottomless pit. So you want to understand sort of like the basics enough that, if someone is talking to you, you can put two and two together, but you never really want to be afraid to ask questions. I don't know what, that means. Can you explain it to me? What is, the YDX and why is it? Yeah, so I think that's just a general rule to be inquisitive, and then you can take it a step further, like Seth said, and go through Segment University, or just keep the learn page of. I spend quite a lot of time on the customer IO learn page, so I can testify that it's useful. So just keep learning, I think, about the technical stuff as you encounter challenges or whatever. Learn a little bit about that, and then learn a little bit about that.
Yeah, if I'm hearing some main takeaways from today's event is don't trust the first opinion, test it out, get the data, and then the best thing is just to keep learning, keep looking things up as they come, and getting better at them each time. So thanks a bunch, y'all, for coming on. I hope you had fun. I had a lot of fun. And yeah, folks in the audience, thanks for joining us. I hope you took away something from these two that you can implement with your business today. So Seth, Ugo, thanks again.